Hey, Rinnie. Oh, wait a minute. You look down. What's going on?
Hey, Stephanie. Truthfully, I just had a panic attack a little while ago, and I lashed out at someone I really care about. And it makes me wonder if, we work in this field of changing mindsets, but Stephanie, can we really change our minds?
Rinnie, I'm happy to tell you, yes, we absolutely can. You can come back from this.
Good morning, everyone in podcast land this morning. Hope you're doing well. I am Rinnie Orr, Associate Director of Web Squared, and I am also the Remedy podcast editor and producer.
And good morning, everyone. I am Stephanie Terry, Executive Director, and I don't know nothing about podcasts except how to run my mouth. So I'm Rinnie's podcast sidekick.
Stephanie, you're doing great.
Thank you.
I love having you as a sidekick.
We like to laugh, as you can see, y'all.
Do you remember the last couple of weeks we've talked about these zones of awareness? And then
Yes.
last podcast we talked about these panic zones reaction. And I shared just now that, it really is a reaction that we have like to circumstance that just happens to us sometimes. And even if we know we're being irrational, we're like, where do these like behaviors and thoughts come from?
Yeah, Rennie, and it took me a long time to learn this because I used to suffer from lots of anxiety and panic. If those of you that are listening that have known me in my 20s and 30s, but I'm glad to say that there's actually a method to the madness. That
Really?
these zones and these panic zone reactions that we experience as human beings, they actually do come from somewhere.
And can I ask where that something is?
Yes. Well, I'm calling it because I learned about this analysis in my work with CORE, Communities Organizing for Racial Equity. Shout out to CORE. But we call it a cycle of socialization. But the first person to pen that term, her name was is it Bobbie Harro, Rinnie?
Yes, Bobbie Harro.
And I think Rinnie is gonna link an article in the show notes, right?
Yeah, I'm going to link her article called Cycles of Socialization in the show notes so people can find it easily and, read it. It's a really good article.
Right. But first, before we get into the cycle of socialization, let's just talk about what socialization is. And really simply, it's just a process of learning to behave that is acceptable to society. Think about that. A process that is learning to behave that is acceptable to society. Those words together make me think of, I don't know, like I got a picture of the what were those folks in England?
The royal family?
Yeah, the royal family.
The
What's
king
acceptable
and
that
the
is
queen.
not? And the queen,
Do you want to have tea with the queen?
Yes.
And just think
But
of all of the behaviors they have to learn. You have to like curtsy and you can't stand taller than the queen. And if you do any of things that are a breach of that like culture, you're like banned and,
yes,
shunned.
yes,
And they're like, oh my gosh, you were so disrespectful to the queen.
exactly. And then in other cultures and other places around the world, similar, right? Maybe different things that are
Mm-hmm.
acceptable and not acceptable, but um, depending on where you were born and where you grew up, as a baby, what's acceptable and what's not, what do we eat and when do we eat and how do we eat it, and when do we go to bed and how do we say prayers or not say prayers, or all of that first learning starts when we're babies. So the very first stage of socialization, we're calling it Bobbie calls it the beginning stage, and that's our first socialization.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second stage is the institutions that influence.
Can I interrupt? Just and the thing about the first stage is that it's happening when we're so little, before we even form language.
Yes.
A lot of it we learn before we can even ask for help or communicate what our needs are. And
Yes.
so if we're lucky, we have really good caretakers around us who can anticipate and help us communicate those things before we can communicate them ourselves. But if we're not so lucky, there are certain patterns and behaviors that form in us as individuals before we can even communicate.
Absolutely. At that stage, we're like blank slates.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no mechanism saying yes, no. It's just accepting all that information.
Mm-hmm.
So the next stage, we grow up. We may go to kindergarten, first grade. Maybe we're in preschool. We may be taken to church. We may start looking at television. We have peer groups that we're a part of. All of those things and people and systems reinforce, right, what we've learned at home.
Mm-hmm.
Reinforce all of those belief systems and messages that we took in as children before we even knew what we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And the institutions often mirror the larger culture, right? The belief systems, the stereotypes, the viewpoints, the biases, they mirror those tenfold, about how to be and what to be and what to like and how to like it and why you should like it. So that second stage is really a powerful teaching on what's acceptable. Then we go to our third stage, and that's where our everyday interactions and experiences reinforce what we've been taught.
And this is where the cycle kind of sets in, because our behaviors and our reactions to things are informed from when we're little, and then they're reinforced through the institutions, and then it circles back around. There are actually reinforcements of also behaviors and stuff that have already been reinforced. It's just an endless cycle.
Right. And so now, if we're seeing certain groups or certain people treated unfairly, and we see other types of people being celebrated, even if you feel a certain way about it, that constant interaction and experience will solidify your belief about who's valuable, who's celebrated, who's a part of the end, who's not. It comes in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, the result of that is that those ingrained beliefs influence our actions and decisions without us even realizing it.
So they become very parts of our unconscious mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know listeners have heard the word bias. They become part of our biases. Sometimes it can inform our what we call logical fallacies, actually flaws in thinking, because it may sound logical, but because of our biases and our belief systems, we can think illogically. And the results of all of this socializations reinforce how we even view our own selves.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely inform our perspectives and how we view others. And because we don't have to talk about how imperfect our world is, we all know it's imperfect in so many, many ways. This process of socialization literally means that we have been taught to what's acceptable and what's not in a world that's incredibly imperfect. We've got a lot of good things, but there's a lot of things that we need to grow and transform. Mm-hmm. So what does this have to do with our work? Well, here's the thing. Our belief systems inform our behaviors. They inform our capacity to vision, to dream, and to act on those dreams. It informs our faith in ourselves, our faith in others, who we trust, who we don't. It's so huge. In a way, it's almost like that iceberg, right? So you can see the tip of it and you think you understand it, but the part that can really stop you is the part that's invisible.
Right. And a lot of this mindset work we do is trying to make what's invisible visible so people can be aware of where these hidden messages have impacted their lives. And the great news is that we can break those cycles.
We absolutely can break those cycles. We have the power to actually transform our belief systems, our behaviors, and ultimately our environments in our world. Mm-hmm. But it does require more information, which is what we're going to talk about in the next podcast.
Yeah. Our next episode, we're going to talk about how the mind works. And we're going to start breaking it, over the course of this podcast, we're going to try to break down some of these mechanisms that, are invisible to us so that we can, go forth in our business and endeavors with empowerment and with mindfulness. And we're not just being triggered like I was earlier today and just having reactions to things that maybe aren't based in reality or just that are beyond our control.
Absolutely. Yep. So we're going to talk about how we can understand ourselves better, understand others better, communicate that understanding in a way that totally gives us the skills, the capacity, the power to create the lives that we want to live and experience the relationships that we want to have. So I'm excited about that next podcast, but it's time, I think, to move on to one of my favorite parts of our podcast. Rinnie?
Our gratitude moment. Stephanie, we're having an event in August 9 at 79 West Innovation Hub. It's a happy hour networking event, and we're going to celebrate National Black Business Month, and everyone is welcome to join us. But what I'm really excited to, and I'm very thankful and grateful, is to the 14 entrepreneurs that we're working with who said that they would come and showcase their businesses.
I'm grateful for those entrepreneurs also. That's one of the favorite parts of my job is to sit and meet and, share and learn from our entrepreneurs as they're building their amazing businesses. So I'm super grateful for that. Rinnie, I'm super grateful for you for really organizing this thing and putting it together. You did a wonderful job.
Well, thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, but I want to also lift up, I went to an amazing conference this week. a DE and I. That's how people were saying it. I was like, oh, I've been saying it wrong. But a DE and I conference sponsored by the Raleigh Chamber of Commerce. And it was just full and rich with information and amazing people. And I learned a lot. And there's so many. And you know what I was really grateful about, Rinnie?
What's that?
That there were like companies that you see every day, big corporations that you would think would be at a DE&I conference, and they were there. And they were not only sponsoring it, but they had sent their best people to learn more on how to integrate it into their work. So that I'm super grateful about.
That sounds like awesome. Just reinforces that, that there are so many people out there who want like to build a better world, and it's not just a few handful of people here and there, but I feel like there's a lot of good people out there, and this is just a reminder that we're all in it together.
Absolutely.
Before we sign off,
we
are going to sign off, but stay tuned. After this segment, there will be a short assignment for everybody to think about the cycle of socialization in your own life.
All right. And you know how we sign off. The evolution begins with dialogue. Bye-bye now.
We introduce this new segment, Food for Thought, to help you integrate our podcast conversation into your own work, endeavors, and life's mission. The assignment can also be found in today's show notes, along with the article link for Harro's Cycle of Socialization article. This week, if you have some time, think about and divide your life into 5 to 10 chronological chapters, and think about the most important arcs that have shaped and defined you through these chapters. Reflect on these questions. How have these arcs created any particular belief or belief systems that you believe about yourself and your place in the world? Have these arcs shaped any self-limiting beliefs that might be holding you back? Thank you for listening to the Remedy Podcast, a mindset shifting project of WEBB. Wealth Through Entrepreneurship for Black and Brown Businesses is a North Carolina nonprofit located in Chatham County. We offer incubator, accelerator business services to Black and BIPOC entrepreneurs. Our podcast hosts are Stephanie Terry and Rinnie Orr, the co-founders of WEBB. We realize that building an ecosystem of support is critical to achieving our mission. Your donation to WEBB supports the podcast, WEBB's coaching services, and the promotion of the businesses and entrepreneurs we serve. To learn more about WEBB, please visit our website at webbsquared.org.